On this blazer, we're going to deal with the fronts first, the fronts that overlap with button and buttonholes. This blazer is going to sport a pocket that's already been marked. Here is darts for bust shaping, and we're going to start with those darts first. Pockets have been marked on the outside of the garment. Darts are marked on the inside. Here's that dart. See how it's quite a slender triangle. We're going to start by pinching this dart right in half and pin. I like to start at the wide end of the triangle. Stick the pin in to your well-marked dots. Make sure they match up. Pin. Go to the center of that long triangle. Grab a pin. Match up your marks. Anchor. Finally, at the bottom, you just have one. It's the point. I like to pin that at a diagonal. Now I see I don't quite like how that middle one turned out between the 2 points, so I'm just going to let it naturally fall into place. Go for it again, matching up, pin. I'm ready to sew. Now actually, as it turns out, I kind of pinned these on the other side of what I would have liked to, because I like to start at the top up here and come down to the point. That's how I like to do it. It works out the best, I believe, that way. So I'll just resituate. Now I really am ready to sew. And I'll sew from here down to the point. Leave a long tail for tying. Okay, here we go. We're going to start at the notch, the wide part of this dart. Forward, backward for back stitching, forward again. And we're just aiming for that point. Almost there. And once we're there, simply just run off the machine. And then pull off quite a long tail. Now with that long tail, a knot needs to end up here. You can backstitch, but sometimes that's awkward. That's why I run off a long tail, and then I simply get a knot in there. Some way, somehow. You don't have to do it this way. Just get a nice knot in there. And it doesn't hurt to double it. So we just snipped that long tail, and now the dart is finished. Press that dart down. Darts are usually pressed down, and vertical ones are pressed in, generally speaking. Okay? Now we're going to work with the patch pocket, 2 of them. Pocket number 1, we're going to press along this fold line. Yet again, we're going to fold down and press a 1/4 inch here. Measure and mark it yourself, or eyeball it as I have. Now, turn it back on itself where you just pressed it, You're going to be stitching along here. Same for the other side. Take it to the machine and stitch down each side. That way we'll be able to turn it right side out into a nice, neat pocket. Now that you stitched down both sides, turn this right side out. Actually, first, let's trim the seam just above the fold so it turns nice. See? Now, let's turn that right side out. Poke out those nice little pointed edges. Clean. And on the underside, just kind of press that down flat again. Press your 5/8 inch seams nice and flat. Then, because of the raw edges, I think I'm just going to tuck and press those under. Just press them under so that like 3/8 to 1/4 inch wide. Give it a nice crisp press. Got yourself a good looking pocket. I think we end up top stitching along here, so we'll do that next, and then we'll do it again on the other pocket. All of this, we're getting there. Okay, the pattern is calling for the pocket to be pinned at a certain strategic place down at the bottom hem. And once it's pinned here and then pressed up, we'll have a nice pocket in place, and then the hem of this blazer will end up being flush with the pocket. Okay, so I'm now going to pin the bottom of this pocket about 1/4 to 3/8 inch in, honoring these two marks. And by the way, I did serge the bottom of the pocket because of the raw edges. You don't have to if you don't want to, because this is the deep inner part of the pocket where it's really probably not going to unravel and cause you problems. I just went ahead and did. Then see how it will press forward, and we'll have a pocket. It's almost invisible. Handy dandy pocket on the front of the blazer. Okay? What's so clever about sewing it down this way, I feel, is you get this part straight, and now it's going to make it much easier to press this up and just stitch down the sides of the pocket here, rather than having to go all the way around the 3 edges and hope you're straight on the bottom. You're straight here now, so that means you're going to have a much easier time going straight at the sides. As I say, kind of invisible, but here we are, pinned at the top, and it did match up with the mark, the chalk mark that we had made earlier. Okay, ready to sew those two sides. Okay, pocket top stitching in progress. I'm just kind of going the width of a mark on my presser foot that I can see here. Other side now in progress. Okay, and here's the first pocket all completed. Now, I didn't realize this project was going to be so the details would be so invisible with this cute paw print. But there is your pocket, all functional. Now we're going to work on the back piece, which is just a simple piece that has no detail. And what I mean by that is we're going to connect the front pieces that we worked so hard on to the back here at the shoulder seams. Had we not had the pocket and dart detail on those fronts, we would have done those shoulder seams first. So right sides together. Let's pin this shoulder seam. Same for the other side. Shoulder seams now all seamed and serged. Press to the back. If you don't have a serger, it's okay. Either zigzag edge your seams or cut them originally with a pinking shears. When the fabric is ravelly, you want to do what you can to finish seams. The pattern next calls for sleeve work to be done. And then after that would come collar work. Well, guess what? We're going to do collar work first. I'll tell you why. When the big bulky sleeves are hanging off the sides here when you're doing collar work, it gets heavy and I think cumbersome. So I'd rather do the collar work all in this area, the lapel work too, and then go and do the sleeves before there's a lot of weight on the garment. So that's up next, collar. Here are our two collar pieces. One of them needs to have the interfacing attached to it. I have some nice fusible, kind of medium weight interfacing to just press right on. It's going to give us the nice crisp look in this collar that we want. Great, interfacing on with right sides together. Place the other side of the collar. And now you're going to sew around the 3 edges. That's all you need to do is the 3 edges for now. All sewn right sides together, time to trim seam. I go through all the thicknesses, do what you're comfortable with. A lot of patterns ask for you to grade the seam by only trimming one of the seams. What I mean is one of the thicknesses. I just like to trim both. Do what's comfortable for you. At any rate, to get a nice crisp point, you're going to need to grade a nice round corner here. Trim nice and round. Turn right side out. Work it as long as you need to get that point out. Which might entail taking a pin and carefully pulling that point out. Just take your time. Sometimes one corner will work out better than the other, and the other one will just be work. But it is worth it to patiently pick out the points, okay? Well, I feel like my points are pretty good. So I'm going to press this down now. Then just look for uniformity. You want the piece to match. Okay? Look for uniformity. Okay, open your garment once again. You got the fronts and you got this back here. It's time to attach this collar that we just worked so hard on. Great. How do you get this flat thing onto this round curved garment? Well, you just do. Make certain that the fused side is the closest to the garment, and hopefully you cut your notches. And you know, if you didn't, or accidentally cut them off, or something happened to them, don't despair. You can always find the middle of your collar and mark it with a pin. And you can always find the middle of your back by doing the same thing. Find the middle and mark it with a pin. And then you would just match those two pins up. Okay? It's that simple. Don't despair when you lose the notching. And you can always get your pattern out and mark it some other way too. Just remark it. Okay, so let's wrestle this collar down. We've got it pinned on at the notches or at that midpoint that I just showed you how to do. Now make the supple front and back pieces work for you. This doesn't want to, move so much or curve, but you can make the curve of the garment go flat for you. See how I made it go flat? Here's the underside, that shoulder seam. Do some pinning. We may very well be doing some readjusting of our pinning. We know that we want to be about 1 inch short. It's not going to be the biggest lapel you ever saw on this particular blazer. This is kind of a shirt blazer. I'm going to say a mix of a shirt blazer type affair that we're making here. So there. Now pin all this in between, and you've actually got half of it on already. Just pin it and pin it well, so that when you sew it, it'll be quite easy because of the care you took pinning. Okay, see? It's working out. You simply manipulate the supple garment to the collar, the stiff collar. Now let's do that on the other side. Working from the middle, the back middle. Okay, we know we want to stop short about 1 inch. According to the marking that we made earlier. It's hard to see, I know. See, it's working out. Simply make the supple garment flex to the stiff collar, and you will be just fine. Okay, that's what it looks like on the collar side. This is what it looks like on the underside. Gonna go and run your seam now, your 5/8 inch seam, all the way across. Okay, we just barely got this collar started. And at the usual 5/8 inch seam allowance, here we go. It's easier, I feel like, to have the collar on top, because then you can finger and feel what's going on underneath here, because you do have to watch out for catching an accidental pleat. So just go slow and keep checking. And I know the camera is wiggly. finishing up. Okay, now checking the underside of where we just sewed the collar on. Everything looks good. Oop, until we kind of get right about here. Then to the end, it looks good. So I'm going to need to rip out this little area where you can see it kind of puckered. And if we were to leave that, there would be this kind of pucker area underneath here. You could leave it, but I don't want to. We're going to get rid of that. So I'll fix it. So I ripped out this small area, and this time instead of sewing this small area on this side as before, I'm going to sew on this side so I can see what I'm doing. Interfacing pressed on, now we take that little back piece and we're going to sew at the shoulder seams to connect all this up, which will then face the back of the neck and then the front lapels. Facing now complete with the back piece, I pressed the seam allowance forward because on the shirt we pressed it backward, and you'll see later how effective that will be. And then the rest of the facing, which I serged the edge all the way around. Again, if you don't have a serger, please do zigzag or finish somehow. You can always roll forward a couple times and stitch down, straight stitch. As well, I carefully clipped quite a ways in, about 5 times along this curve, because now it's just like it is with the collar. We have a stiff piece that we're going to have to put up against a flexible piece and make it fit. And so by having clipped, see how it will spread now and go flat when we need it to. And how I accomplished that was I put the 2 pieces together like that, and evenly made my snip marks. Okay, about 5 of them should suffice. Okay, get the shirt, spread it out, right side facing, flip the collar back. What will be your lapels are here. Take your facing like so, and match up the supple little back piece with the back piece of the shirt. Now, I forgot to make notch marks on my facing. It's okay. I'm going to match up side seams of the shirt with the facing, and I'll be fine. If I've cut accurately, it'll be fine. Let's see. Stick the pin in at the seam. Let it come out on the other side. Let's try that again. Taking our time. Seam. Come out on the other side, and if you have to readjust like I do, get it on the seam. You want these seams to match. Pin in place. Wrestle it over to the other shoulder seam. Match them up. Again, stab in at the seam, come out on the other side, make it, and as you can see, I myself am challenged here. Here, we'll do it this way. Get matched up. It's so worth it to do it right. Okay, we're good. Now pin all this in between. Fits. Good. Now move from here and go to one side or the other. Here's the collar laying down. Here's the little lapel. Here's your facing. And now it would not have stretched out to the corner here had I not clipped, again, because of the stiffness we talked about before. So I am going to nail down the corner and then let it spread. Let it spread right out against the shirt. And if I have to go a little deeper than 5/8 inch for the seam when I'm sewing through here, so be it. Not a big deal. So again, stiff facing, stretched out against the supple shirt. Pretty well pinned there. All right, let's go to the other side. On the other side, same thing, moving away from the center. Collar, corner lapel, secure these edges, and then spread it. Boldly spread it. Boldly, I say. Checking underneath, because again, we're going to have to look out for bunching up when we sew. Okay. After that, turn sideways, and you're going to have an easy time fitting all this up. Pin alongside. I guess I'll hit the bottom first. Good. Now go to the other side. And finish up. See how I forgot my notches again on the facing? It's there on the shirt. It's okay. Just make it fit. Notches aren't guidelines. You can live without them or be creative. Okay? Facing in progress. I've pinned kind of liberally, I'll tell you why. Because the top piece is stiff and the underpiece isn't, the underpiece might creep a little bit. So just be aware of that. Okay, approaching the point or lapel. Just going slow because I want to turn and make a really sharp turn. And just move slowly and deliberately. Through the slashed area. When we get to this shoulder seam, it's a lot. There's a lot going on. We've got the thickness of the shoulder seam underneath, the thickness of the facing on top. Now we're at the extreme curve of the back neck, but here's where everything fits on nicely without any effort. Keep moving through. Okay, everything along the straight edges worked out fine for me. However, when I got to the curved pieces, the slashed area, on this side, everything looks good except for a little bunching here, which I will go back and fix. Everything's good here. And on the opposite side, looks like I might have a little bunching right at where the lapel will be and where the collar is underneath. So I'm going to fix that. I definitely have some mix up there that I'll fix. So 3 or 4 little areas, little spot areas I need to fix for best results. See, now all this was hung up in a bunch and I'm still ripping a little area here for what will be a spot fix. Go ahead and trim all of this now, all the way around. I'm going to trim from the shirt side so I can see, I mean, if something were to go wrong, I'd rather it went wrong on the facing because I can always redo that much more easily than if I were to accidentally slash into the shirt. Okay, so trim away. Round that corner like we did with the collar. Keep going. Just take care to kind of feel underneath that where you're cutting everything's free. Free from being cut accidentally. Cutting through the neck now, the back neck. Okay, so half of it is trimmed. Go ahead and do the other half. Now we have a tremendous pressing job ahead of us. I'm going to fold that facing to the inside. Get it all pressed in. You've got another point, well, you got 2 of them, at the lapels to turn right side out and poke pin them out nice and crisp. And when it comes to the rounded back facing piece, that's going to be challenging to press flat. But I've got a little trick up my sleeve. I'll show you. And then get over to the other side. Pull that point out, get that perfected, and then keep going until you have pressed the facing fully to the inside. Go for it. Okay, the trick for pressing this curved part down is to, again, make this go flat. pull out the sides. So you just kind of pull them out so that this is laying a little flatter. And it's not like you have to press all the way through here. You just kind of want to press right through there and get it nice. That's just enough to press it down. Okay? It's just a little ways in. You don't have to go clear out here. Just enough. When you put the garment on, it will spread out enough and lay flat alongside the back. It'll all work out. Remember those pockets? We're down at the bottom and we've turned the facing wrong side out because we want to stitch along here to the very end of it because it's going to be turned right side out, much like the collar, and have a nice point here, which will then set us up for the hem that we knew was going to be flush underneath the pocket. Trim just short, about a ½ inch of the serged edge. Turn right side out. Poke out that point. Now see, here's the midway of the collar, all along that little lapel, down the front closure to the bottom. Nice, neat bottom now. That's going to overlap with buttons and buttonholes. Give it a solid press. See how now it sets you up for the hem? Do that on the other side, and then we're going to top stitch all the way around. All the way around. And what that does is that solidifies everything that we've done. Keeps it in place. Alright? Kind of a toss-up to decide which side to top stitch from. Will it be the front side or the inside? Okay, all beautifully top stitched. All the way along, and then I gave it a nice crisp press. And then what did I discover? I discovered I had erased all the buttonhole markings I had made in the beginning, which that's okay. Now is as good as any time to remark those buttonholes, show you how that's done. And we're going to do them next to those buttonholes. We're still staving off doing the sleeves for the same reason. We just don't want all that weight dragging around while we're doing buttonholes. Okay, buttonholes up next. Okay, find your buttonhole pattern piece. Match the top up with the top. At the top and the bottom of each buttonhole, place a pin at an angle towards you. You can see I have the fan on, and that's why I have this here. Here's the next buttonhole. I have so many bent pins. Now you've got 2 of them marked. Last one. Making sure everything's straight. Good. Now the purpose of that was we're going to mark. Take a fresh piece of chalk some way, somehow. Mark the top ones with a dot. Luckily, I'm ending up with black, Oh, this one's going to be a little white, so just mark it as best as you can. Now I'm going to take these top row pins out. Do the same thing on the bottom row. Mark. Good. Now I'm going to draw a straight line in between the marks and really color in that white line so I can really see it. Now the thing about buttonholes is, I'll tell you a little something. You can follow the pattern guideline as I have, but a lot of times I try to figure out where the bra gap is going to be. And maybe I'll just make my buttonholes in a different position. Maybe it'll be here instead of in between here, because I don't want it to pull apart with shoulder movement and reveal the bra gap, I call it. You know what I'm talking about. So just be aware. You can follow the guideline that the pattern provides, but maybe, just maybe, you want to strategically figure out where your buttonholes are going to be because of the bra gap. Okay. Now on the other side closure, you need to mark for buttons. You need to mark for buttons. And how you're going to do that is stab your pin just slightly above halfway at an angle away from you in this event, because you just need the midpoint. Just need the midpoint. And mark it. Just for a guideline. Okay, get it? I probably can't emphasize enough how important it is to practice your buttonholes. This is just a scrap piece, and in fact I'm going to demonstrate only on this scrap piece because it's too cumbersome to show you on the actual garment. Everybody's machine is going to differ. Largely you have a great big thing that you're going to attach here that somehow measures the width of the button that you're going to use. Practice and practice some more with the interfacing in between so that you get the real deal happening here, and just practice until you get it great. Now, one of my buttonholes I just went around once automatically, and then I made it go around a second time. I think I like the look of the second buttonhole better. It's firmer, and then in the end we just take the seam ripper and bravely insert it and rip that open. So I'm going to show you now how this works. On my machine at least. The needle will go down to the bottom point. Threads off to the side. Making sure you've set the machine now for the intended stitch. Here we go. pass done. Second time around the block. There it is. Bravely insert seam ripper. There you are. Let's see how the button does. It's gonna work. Practice until you have great confidence about doing buttonholes. Look at how far we've come. We've got a sweet collar, darling buttons. We're all buttoned up. Now we really can go for the sleeve detail, and then we'll be finished. Except for the hem. But I feel like the hardest part is over. A crisp, clean collar and front closure. Once I take the pattern piece off, I'm going to serge the curved edge of the cap sleeve. Then I'm also going to serge each curve that will accommodate the sleeve. We're working on the left sleeve right now. This is the front, this is the back. We found the middle of the sleeve cap. We found the side seam of the garment. We matched them up, pinned them. Much like we did with the collar, we're going to flatten all this out and make it fit. Two reverse curves. Doesn't seem like they should fit. They ought to fit perfectly. There are times when the pattern calls for gathering and easing of the cap sleeve into place. I don't think we're going to have to do that this time. I'll show you that another time. So pin liberally so that it all fits well. Keep working it till it fits perfectly. It may seem like, ooh, but stretch it, fit it, so that you don't have to do that gathering. Gathering is necessary when the sleeve is quite a bit bigger than the armpit opening, okay? And gathering looks nice on certain styles. This we're going for a smooth look. Finger it. Sewing is every bit as much tactile, maybe even more so, than visual, I feel. Work it in so that it all fits. Keep pinning until it does, so that the sewing is easy. Pin it like crazy till it fits. You will be so glad. Okay, I've pinned it within an inch of its life now. Take it to the machine and it ought to all just go on great. Okay, cap, sleeve in progress. I'm really only going about 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch. It's just too hard without the gathering or easing that we didn't do to go deep, to go as deep as 5/8. So I'm really going more like, I suppose, 3/8. That's okay. Constantly checking the underneath to see if I'm getting hung up. To me, it's worth it if you can skip the easing part, if you just don't have to do it. Home stretch. Yeah. Hey. Great, I didn't get hung up on either sleeve. Time to do one continuous seam from the sleeve through the body. So pin and sew. Okay, that continuous side seam is all done now, and we are starting to get finished. On the sleeve, I marked off 1 inch, pressed it under, and for the hem, I'm just going to do a narrow hem. I'm going to fold it under yet again, so about 3/8 inch hem and top stitch around. Oh, look there, sleeve all hemmed. Now I'll just do the bottom hem and we'll be finished. Can you tell I'm getting so excited about finishing? I'll show you how we'll do that. Okay, ready to sew, but what I did first was I pressed down 1 1/8 inches. Then I pressed it down again, making sure it was nice and tucked. Here I got some raw edges. Nice and tucked in with that facing that we did earlier, the partial hem at the facing. And then I'll just top stitch all the way across to the other side, where again I carefully tucked it under the facing, the bottom closure. We are so almost there. Top stitch now. Finished. Great job. Now let's see how it looks.